All right, and we are live. Welcome, DoorGrow hackers, to the DoorGrow Show. If you are a property management entrepreneur that wants to add doors, make a difference, increase revenue, help others, impact lives, and you are interested in growing your business and life, and you're open to doing things a bit differently, then you are a DoorGrow hacker. DoorGrow hackers love the opportunities, daily variety, unique challenges, and freedom that property management brings. Many in real estate think you're crazy for doing it. You think they're crazy for not, because you realize that property management is the ultimate high trust gateway to real estate deals, relationships, and residual income. At DoorGrow, we are on a mission to transform property management businesses and their owners. We want to transform the industry, eliminate the BS, build awareness, change perception, expand the market, and help the best property management entrepreneurs win. I'm your host, property management growth expert, Jason Hull, the founder and CEO of DoorGrow. Now, let's get into the show. And today I'm hanging out with Mark Dolfini of Landlord Coach. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. That's a heck of an intro.
It's our manifesto.
I love that.
Call it.
Yeah, I love it. That speaks directly to my heart when we're talking about people who are wanting to grow their single family portfolios. And man, I just this gets me fired up.
So Mark, I want to introduce you. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. We were talking before the show a little bit, and I think that we have a lot of alignment, and we both believe in coaching. We both believe in having coaches. So it says Mark Dolfini is a veteran of the U.S. Marines. Thank you for your service. And the author of 3 real estate books. He was first published in 2017, second book released in early 2018, and his third book, The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, came out in March of 2019. He received a Bachelor of Science in Accounting at Purdue University, worked for Marriott International before venturing out full-time into the world of real estate investing. He's the managing broker for a property management company based out of Lafayette, the founder of Landlord Coach, sits on numerous boards, including the Better Business Bureau of Central Indiana, the National Federation of Independent Business, and is a training director for the Central Indiana BNI Franchise and networking organization. He spends his free time pistol shooting and kayaking and lives in Lafayette, where he and his wife, Jennifer, are raising their 2 sons, Leland and Logan. All right, so we got through your bio. So Mark, let's start out with you, and I want to hear about your background. How did you get into the space of real estate, property management, landlord coach, all of this? How did this all sort of come about? Give us a little backstory.
Sure. Well, I'd love to say it was a straight line trajectory, but there's your plan and God's plan, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't usually, they don't always match up, but I am
exactly. And then there's reality.
Exactly.
Reality
right.
always wins. Always wins.
Right. So it's I'd always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I didn't know exactly what that was. I mean, this is back me being, 7 or 8 years old. I was, starting with a vegetable stand of vegetables that I grew in the upstate New York and sold them, at a vegetable stand that I built, out of wood. So it kind of always started back from there. But really, my first go at real estate was when I was actually in the Marine Corps still. And I bought 40 acres of property that was in northern Arizona, and paid a couple $100 an acre for it. And that was really it. It was just desert in the middle of nowhere that no one seemed to want. But I knew at $200 an acre, I think is about what I paid. It was a pretty good deal, and I ended up buying it for capital appreciation at that point in time. But having a piece of land that doesn't generate income, doesn't generate revenue, really, I learned pretty quickly is not the way to wealth. Getting someone else to pay for it was really what I wanted to do. So when I got to when I was getting near the end of my time in the Marine Corps, had a great time. It was good for me in a lot of ways. It was tough, but it was. I'm glad I did it. But I also knew I needed to get an education. So I got out. Now let me just frame this, because I went to school in upstate New York and graduated 352nd out of 354. So
Okay.
let that sink in to everybody. I
Right.
was at the bottom of the class.
Right.
And the
Not top of
reason,
the class by any means.
right, not even close. So the reason I'm saying that is because people who are out there thinking that they have to have this high level of intelligence and high level of intellect to make this business work, in anything you're doing in real estate, it's about the want to, it's not about the intelligence. So let me just put that to bed right away. Now, that doesn't give you an excuse to not go out and say, well, I need to learn things and therefore it's just too hard. There are lots of things that are difficult, but walking when you were 2 years old was probably difficult, right? Or 18 months, when, learning how to talk was difficult at one point. It's just the same thing. So you can learn this if you have the right intention. So anyway, getting out of the Marine Corps and getting into college was a little tricky because with my stellar high school career, I had to figure out how to do that. I hadn't sat for an SAT, so I had to learn all the stuff that I was had to learn in high school, all that stuff. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I actually got accepted to Purdue because I got a high enough score at my SAT. And while I was at Purdue, I started buying some rental real estate. And by the time I got out of Purdue, I had about a dozen rental units altogether, which is about roughly $500,000 worth of real estate. So that's really how I got started, and that's really where my real estate education really got started.
Right. So you cut your teeth in the real world with your own real estate deals, dealing with, tenants, toilets, and termites, I'm sure, at one point. So, all
Yep.
right. So fast forward to now. So help us understand. We're going to be talking about the VIP paradigm, vision, infrastructure, and process, this acronym. So,
Sure.
so let's get into it.
Sure. Well, so before I get into that, it's kind of important to know the rest of the story, as Paul
Yeah,
Harvey
share
might say.
more.
So, as I was getting out of out of college and I was buying more rental units, and there's lots of property managers out there who are also investors, so I know I'm speaking to them as well. But as I was growing this side of the portfolio, I was working as an accountant. I have a degree in accounting. I was working for the Marriott, wonderful, wonderful company. And I learned an awful lot from the hospitality industry in terms of how to treat people, how to treat customers, and really treat my residents like I would be treating guests, like I would be treating hotel guests. And there's a lot to learn out there from the hospitality industry in terms of what they do right, and how just a different approach rather than, it's almost like the paradigm shift that happened with the banks maybe about 20 years ago, where it used to be, you went into the bank almost when you were in trouble, right? And now you walk into a bank and everyone greets you and throws bottles of water at you and says hello, and they give you this, right? That wasn't always the way.
Yeah.
Right. That wasn't always the way, right? The old school guys may remember that. Now it's a different paradigm because now they're welcoming customers. They want you to come into the bank. They want you to have that transaction at their location. Well, now I would love to see that shift continue into the property management side, because now it almost seems like the residents are the enemy, rather than they're the ones who pay the bills. So as I continue to evolve, and I loved what I learned from the property or from the hospitality industry, eventually I kind of got to a point where I was able to get out and start to do that full time, just in managing my own portfolio. Unfortunately, I got very, very over leveraged, not only in money but in time, because what was happening is I was every time a task would come on, rather than looking for someone to hand that task to, I just took it on and kept it. And even to the point where, and there's lots of property managers out there that are doing this, that are not valuing their time highly enough. And what ends up happening is, they end up taking on this job that, is they don't factor in opportunity cost, where they're going to take every job that's out there and they're going to do it. And even though they may be worth realistically $20, $30, $40, $50 an hour, they're still doing $10 an hour jobs. So in essence, every time they're doing a $10 an hour job, they're costing their business $40 an hour or $30 an hour. And they don't look at it in that paradigm. So, learning to fire yourself is one of the biggest things. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. But really where my transition into property management occurred was almost out of necessity. And that seems to happen for a lot of people. And certainly I was no exception. But climbing at, going into 2009, I had about $6 million worth of real estate in my own portfolio. And I was working 16, 17 hours a day, just trying to keep all the balls in the air. And then when the economy fell apart, that's when things really, really got bad for me. So of course I started working 20 and 22-hour days and catching naps wherever I could. I was doing it all, and I was doing it all very, very poorly. And finally, where the camel's back broke was I got sick, and I almost died in the hospital from double pneumonia. So from all of that is really where I really got very intentional about setting up a business that was sustainable. And I started to deleverage my cash flow by doing some property management, for other people. I got my broker's license, started doing some property management on the side. And that's really where I also got very, very intentional about how I wanted my business to look, the infrastructure that I needed it, and also the processes that needed to run on that infrastructure. So that's the vision, infrastructure, process paradigm that you were alluding to earlier, is, getting a vision for where I wanted to go, setting up the proper infrastructure for it, and then putting the processes in place on top of that.
I want to point this out because I think this is a milestone that I'm wondering if every entrepreneur eventually goes through it. It's like a crisis of health where we finally realize that we are not invincible, that we can't, it's not sustainable to just do the hustle and the grind that's like so, trumped up and it made to look so beautiful and exciting, to just work, endless work weeks and crazy amounts of hours. And we really, looking back, I had my own sort of crisis like this. I remember I was literally at the end of a sales call laying on the floor because I think I had slipped a disc in my back or something, because I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I was just working. I thought I had to work harder and harder. I was just do. And then that, then it couldn't work, like for like 2 weeks. Like I was laying on the floor and it was ridiculous. And that got really expensive trying to recover from that. And I just remember, like, that was when I had this shift and this epiphany came to me that like our health and self-care is the foundation for my ability to provide, to do everything in the business. And you need to have a business that serves your needs and is sustainable, instead of becoming this robot slave that is going to wear your body out on the business.
Right. And to that point, you have to understand that we work so we can live, not the other way around. Exactly. And there's so many people who are out there living to work and going, and property managers, you get that one or two critical pieces of, or one or two critical people that are doing 80 to 90% of the work. And then you get everybody else who just kind of shows up and cares or doesn't care or whatever. And I know it's a typical 80-20 rule where, you get 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. And in property management, it's more like 1% doing 99% of the work. And there you got those critical pieces, and you cannot build a sustainable business on that. You have to, you have to make sure, I mean, lots of property managers are very small. They're under 500 units and they're, 1 or 2 man shops. We're the property management company that I have, definitely is a weird hybrid between management company and maintenance company, but it works, and it works really, really well. And then we can get into that later, but I agree with you. I think you have to almost get to that crisis, you either get to that crisis and you make a decision, or you just have enough where you just walk away. And either one, I don't think is good. I think a lot of people are get to that point because they don't value their free time. And that's fundamentally it. They're just not valuing their time.
Yeah. Time's worth more than money to me now. I mean, and I think if people approached it from that standpoint at the beginning, that's why you hire somebody. You're buying time. Mm-hmm. That's why you build a business. You're buying time. Like every dollar I spend should be hopefully moving towards buying me some additional time, right, or collapsing time. That's why I get coaches. It collapses time. I'm buying time.
Right.
So, and I love what you're saying. I think we build the business. A lot of times we start out building the business we can have instead of the business that we want. And they're two very different things.
I would agree.
One
yeah.
We're serving, and the other one serves us.
Right. That's exactly right. One of the things that's there's two catchphrases I use all the time. And one of those is, there is no amount of money that will make time irrelevant. And when you get your head around that, then all of a sudden you say, okay, well, and if the other phrase I use quite often, especially when I'm signing off on, a live event or something like that, is, there not only is there is no amount of money that will make time irrelevant, but if you don't place a value on your free time, someone else will. And usually that amount of money, usually the amount of value that they're going to place on your free time is far less than what you're worth. And they know it. That's why they're calling you with that. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The you got a minute, and hey, can I just take you out to lunch, and these kind of things. Yeah.
absolutely right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, you need to value your time. So, and I don't know how you tell people to value your time, but I usually say take your gross revenue of the company if you're the entrepreneur, and divide that by like 20/80 or a 40-hour work week, and that's a pretty good estimate of what you should at least value your time as a dollar if you were looking at it on a dollar per hour basis.
Yeah, and it's probably if you did it on a 40-hour work week, you would be surprised. But most property managers I know are working way more than that.
Yeah.
And when you can back into it just from that simple math, and that's a perfect calculation. In fact, that's exactly how I would tell people how to just put a rough number on your time, or even people that are doing, property management on the side, or, there's lots of property managers who are also real estate broker. They all have to be brokers, but I'm saying they're also doing real estate transactions on the side where they're showing properties and they're selling properties. That's all revenue. And that's where you need to determine your opportunity cost. I would say all of your revenue that's coming in, divide that, by the, coming up with an hourly rate in terms of a 40-hour work week or even a 50-hour work week, to be fair. But, if you're coming up with a $50, $60 an hour rate, and you're doing $12 an hour work, you've got to replace yourself from doing that task as soon as you possibly can. And, I have a driver that I hire when I go to Indianapolis, and I go to Indianapolis a couple times a week, and people are like, oh, you're Mr. Big Time. And I'm like, no, it's not about that. It's not about because I feel super important. It's because I get 3 hours of windshield time that literally is purposeless. I mean, I might listen to an audiobook. I still like to drive, but it's not about that. It's so I can get that time back. So when I'm done at the end of the day, I'm not completely wiped out and spent, and I don't have to spend an extra 3 hours at the office that I should be spending with my wife, even if it's just sitting on the couch with her. It's just sitting at home, being with her, or or being around my kids, or just being home. Is where I want to be. And there's lots of people who are just they don't understand that. And I'm like, okay, I pay this guy maybe 50, 75, $100 to drive me there and back. That's easily worth it, because my time is, several $100s an hour. If someone wants to call me and coach, with me, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what I'm going to charge you. So why would I spend time? Why would I cost myself that money driving? And sometimes I still do because I want the solitude, and I want to listen to an audiobook and just enjoy it. Sometimes I just want road time, but lots of times if it's purposeless, I really want to try to eliminate those bottlenecks as quickly as I possibly can, so I can stay focused on what I'm really trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You'll see people. It's funny. You'll see entrepreneurs. They might say they have $1 million business. Their time's probably worth about $480 an hour by that calculation,
Right.
maybe about say $500 an hour. And they're still like doing, like, sometimes you'll see them doing their yard. You'll see them,
Yep.
and if they love doing those things, great. But sometimes we'll be so focused on one area that we lose sight. So for example, there was a time period where I hired a house manager and a nanny because all the fake dad stuff was being done, or fake mom stuff. Like, kids
Right.
don't care about laundry. They don't care about who makes the meals. They want time.
Right.
And so if I can offload those things to somebody and I'm not paying them $500 an hour.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I can offload those things, and then I can spend time. I can have more time. So yeah, ultimately we're buying time. And I think that's a critical piece to growing and scaling a business. So So are we still on the topic of vision? Are we getting into this or?
Well, yeah. So that's really I mean, that's 100% vision, and that's where a lot of times, especially whether I'm working with an individual investor or I'm working with a property manager, door count is really where a lot of people say that, and I stop them, and and I know like for example, I've got the moniker Landlord Coach, but my goal is to make people not landlords, right? Just like I if I was going to be a property management coach, my goal would not be to make them in property management, or better property managers. My goal for them is to be better business owners. And even though a lot of times they say, oh, well, I want, if it's an investor, oh, I want 100 units. Okay. Or if it's a property manager, I want 1,000 doors. I'm like, okay, well, why not? So 999 wouldn't do it. And they go, well, yeah, maybe. Okay. So 997 wouldn't do it. Right. And I'll go down this until they finally get to, well, okay, Mark, what's your point? Right. And I said, look, it's not the number of doors. It's really about,
not an ego number. It's not an ego goal.
Right. It's not about that at all. It's about, what are you trying to accomplish in terms of, in terms of revenue, in terms of your revenue goals. It's really about that. I mean, if this is about ego, I respect that, but right. It's not, that's not towards your vision. So a lot of times I say, okay, well, let's get towards a vision that's really actually purposeful. And I start, and usually it's, after I beat them up a little bit and I go, okay, 997, how about 995? Right. And after they go, okay, what's your point? I'm like, okay, well, so, a lot of times I would say, okay, so in other words, you're saying to me that if, you need to get to a revenue or you need to get to 1,000 doors at say, $1,000 a piece. That's what you need, but you couldn't get there with 500 doors at 2,000 a piece. Mm-hmm. Obviously the math is the same and a lot less work. And they go, well, yeah. Okay. So is it really about door count? Because I can get you 1,000 doors. They're not going to be anything in the world that you or anybody else is going to want to manage, but you really want 1,000 doors?
It's ridiculously low and you can get a lot of doors really quickly.
And that's what a friend of mine did. And he's in an area of, the state that I wouldn't go to for love or money. And right. It's terrible. And I feel bad for him because I see him. It's like watching him get into a leaky lifeboat, in shark infested waters. And I'm just like, oh my God. And he's a good dude, but I feel like, man, and he grew, overnight, from 0 to, I don't even know. I think he's bumping maybe 150, 200 now. But they're units that I wouldn't take for any amount. Like I'd literally go, well, the rent amount isn't enough to cover my management fee, right? Because it wouldn't be enough. So
yeah. So ultimately, people really need to ask themselves the question, what do you really want? What do I really want out of the business? I mean, if it's an ego goal, great. But maybe what you really want is it's usually some sort of lifestyle, or maybe you want to have some sort of amount of time. You want to spend time with your kids. What do you really want? And maybe you can create that and have that without having 1,000 doors or without it having to look a certain way that you may have thought. And then
right.
Why does it really matter? Why does it really matter?
Right. That's the thing that it's really not about door count as much as people want to focus on that. Now, to a certain degree, like it depends on your business structure. Now, again, investors are a little bit different than property managers, just because, like in my case, we do a lot of our own maintenance. We have an in-house maintenance department. So a significant amount of revenues come in from that. So having more doors enables us to have more opportunities to do maintenance, right? So in that particular case, it does really matter. But we still want to manage higher end properties. We don't do a lot of low end stuff anymore just because of the amount of banging your head against the ground. It just increases exponentially when you get to a certain lower market. And it's just not a market that we want to court anymore. We got out of that probably maybe 6 years ago and never looked back. And it was just the level of drama that has decreased in my life has just been exponential. So not saying that that's bad. I mean, there's other people who, want to court that market and do well in that market. That's certainly that's fine if that's a strategy and that's working for you. I'm not telling you about to change it, but for me, the number of doors I would really invite you to really focus on not even so much as a revenue goal, because then the revenue goal, it's so funny because people go, well, yeah, I would like to have $50,000 a month coming in, free cash flow. I'm like, okay. And then I
Then
go
they
back
have
to my normal
costs
argument
that
and
are
go, okay,
ridiculous.
what's that?
But then they have costs that are ridiculous.
Well, but okay, so you want $50,000 a month coming in, 49,990 won't do it, right? So you have to tie it to a life output goal, and that's why I say to them, "What is this even about? What are you trying to accomplish?" So when they say, "Well, okay, well, what I'm really trying to do, honestly," and usually it's after they get through start to fight back some tears, they go, "Honestly, I just want to spend more time with my kids." Okay, what does more time mean? Honestly, I would love to be able to homeschool them. Awesome. Now we're getting to a vision that really friggin' matters, not some nebulous $1,000 or 50,000 a month or whatever it is. Like that's what you want. And we can tie a number to that. We can tie a revenue number to that, or I want to move my aging mother into a house that's just close by. Okay, what's it going to take to buy your mom a house? Or do you even need to buy it? Can you rent one? You don't know. I mean, for the next 10 years, your mom's, she's 80 now. Is she going to live another 10 years? Or you can budget 10 years worth of rent payments or that sort of thing. But whatever that is, you can actually get a quantifiable life output goal that's tied to that. And that's really what vision really needs to be. It needs to be this almost undescribable. It comes from the limbic system of our brain, which is the problem with the limbic system is it doesn't have a capacity for language. It can't explain why you love your wife. It can't explain why you love your grandmother. It just, we come up with platitudes like, well, she bakes me cookies, but that's a thing, right? You just kind of say, I don't know. It's just the way she makes me feel. And you get teary eyed. Yeah. That's the limbic system activating in your brain. And that's how you know when you get to that point of your vision and you're starting to think that way and feel that way and you get the goosebumps on your arms, that's when you know you're close. And that's when you know you're starting to get to a vision that really, really matters.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. So I think you touched on a couple of things. So like one of the concepts that I share is the cycle of suck, and it's like if you take on bad owners, you'll have bad tenants, or bad properties. If you have bad properties, you have bad tenants. If you have bad tenants, then you'll have a bad reputation, and then you attract more bad owners. And so
Exactly.
by taking on the crappy properties, you end up caught in property management hell, the cycle of suck. Another concept that I think resonates with what you were talking about that I like to share is the 4 Ds to revenue, which is it's not just about doors, but the 4 Ds are, the first one could be doors, but that the next one is how many deals. So it's deals is usually what I share first. You've got number of deals you're getting and how many doors per deal. It's not just about doors. And so one deal being worth one door, and that's the ratio. Then the challenge is you don't have as much leverage. It's not as easy. But if on average your deals have 2 doors, you've doubled your revenue, right?
Right.
In this equation, it's these 4 numbers that multiply. Then you've got duration. How long can you keep a door on? Like a 1-year accidental investor versus a 10-year buy and hold.
Right.
In your property management business, there's a 10 times difference. Like that's pretty significant. And then there's dollars, right? It's just what's your fee structure? Like, are your fees good? Yeah. It's
Right.
not just about doors. There's all these other variables that can create that. But I love shifting it towards the life goal, because the life goal is what really matters. And I think what I would imagine you found this with coaching clients, that sometimes the life goal and all the stuff they had trumped up in their mind or built up or that they felt they needed in order to have the life that they want, sometimes you can just jump right to the life goal. You can just create that. Sometimes it's not like I want to spend, an extra hour with my kids. Okay, block out an extra hour.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I didn't even think I could do that.
Right.
Sometimes it's really that simple. We can just jump right to the life goal, and the business will still be there and it will still function.
Yep, that is so true, and it really, one of the things I talk about in the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0 is really about making that decision. And a buddy of mine who's got multiple units, he's just nauseatingly wealthy in terms of real estate, but he's a great guy, and he kind of said to me, he's like, I read your book the other day, and he's a guy who doesn't read, and he's such a snarky friend. This guy named Randy, and he says, I would never admit this to your face, but I feel like I have to. He goes, but I really got a lot out of that book. And I was like, okay, what's the punchline? And he's like, no, there's really no punchline. He's like, I feel like I am time wealthy. He goes, and funny, I could probably retire based on the life output that I want to define right now. He's like, really, time wealth is really more of a decision than it is a destination. And I was like, yeah, it really is, because right now I have all the time wealth that I want. I work about maybe 2 hours a week. Sometimes I'm working more. Like right now, I'm pitch hitting more in the office just because we're down a person. But it gets me re-engaged in the business, and it kind of makes me go, hey guys, why are we doing it this way? And they go, oh, because this, and this. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I let them define the process. I'm not about to tell them if they're the ones that normally work the process. My job is really to kind of come in, look and see what maybe needs tinkering with, maybe, or adjusting, giving them coaching. That's the sort of thing. And that's, working 2 hours a week, sometimes 4 or 5 hours a month in the property management business. But I have all this time wealth to do other things like coaching and writing books and things that I really, really enjoy. And, that's it, but it really is a decision. And when you have people who are really, and you hire good people, you bring them in, you let them, you set up a solid infrastructure for your business, set up solid processes, and you let them run it. And stay the hell out of the way. And that's where I see a lot of, when I'm coaching property managers, that's where I see a lot of problems is they don't know, they don't have an established vision for themselves. They don't have proper infrastructure. They're trying to run it on really lean infrastructure or none infrastructure or none at all. And then therefore the process the process has to pick it up. So if you have a weak infrastructure, and when I'm talking about infrastructure, we'll say say property management software or a website or things like that. So when you have weak infrastructure, it has to be picked up by a stronger process, which means a person has to pick up that extra process, right? So let's just go from the really sublime to ridiculous level. Say you don't have property management software, you're running everything on Excel spreadsheets, right? So that's the extreme. But there are property managers out there doing that. So that means they have to have a lot of people managing that poor infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. Here's the one thing I hear all the time is that, oh, my property manager doesn't communicate. They don't communicate with me. They don't tell me. When you have bad communication, that is a symptom of the problem, not the problem. Let me say that again. When you have bad communication, that's the symptom of the problem, not the problem. The problem is you have bad infrastructure, you have bad process. That's where communication issues are going to show up.
Nice.
So, right. So let's just use a very, obscure example. Okay. Have you ever we've all been to a restaurant where you have, where you have bad service, right? And you're sitting down and you can see that waiter has 9 tables and that waiter has 1 table, right? Correct. You're trying to communicate your order to the restaurant or to someone to take your order. But because you can see the problem because you're sitting on the outside, you can see the problem, but you're kind of going, well, that waiter's got 9 tables. That one's got 1. Why is the manager stepping in? Bad process. Why does that person have 9 tables? That's bad infrastructure. The scheduling that never should have happened that way, right? That's just one very obscure example. Let me use another quick example here real fast. So when you have, like, say for example, have you ever walked up to a McDonald's, like at a truck stop, where you go and there's no there basically you've got four cashiers ready to take your order, right? And you walk up and you kind of look left and right, and everybody's kind of standing back away from the registers, right? The customers. So you're trying to look like you're trying to figure out who's next in line. You're like, can I go? Are you next? Right? So because there's no infrastructure, the customers have to decide who's next in line, right? Right. So what's a simple piece of infrastructure that you could put in place to manage that? Well, a simple queue, a simple rope line, right? Or that would easily, that's a piece of infrastructure that you could put in place that would manage the customer flow. Then you don't have to worry about that. Okay. And another example would be a bad process, right? Let's pretend you go back to the same McDonald's, and this time you've got, it's really busy and the customers are 4 and 5 deep at each line, at each of the 4 registers. And this time what ends up happening is you get a manager that opens the 5th register and says, what? I can help the next person.
Yes.
And then you get somebody who goes from the end of one line and then jumps in front of everybody else. So now you just basically created a brawl, right? This mad rush towards this fifth line. That's a process problem. What should have happened is, hey, I'm the assistant manager. Hey, I'm going to have you open that line over there, but I'm going to direct some people over there. I'm going to go out into the crowd and direct some people over there first before you say anything, right? So then you can manage the process, right? That's process. That's a broken process when they do it the other way. So that's why I'm saying, like, infrastructure and process, it shows up in bad communication all the time. And this means they're not communicating work orders when they come in. They're not communicating when a resident doesn't pay rent. Owners need to know that. They need to know if they're expecting the revenue to come in on a certain month and they don't get communicated that, the resident never paid rent. And, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to go ahead and evict them. They need to know these things. And these are the sorts of, when you don't have an infrastructure or a process in place to allow them to let them know that, that's when communication falls. That's when the bad communication issues show up.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's really tempting for entrepreneurs to start blaming their team. This is like early entrepreneurs that they're transitioning away from being a solopreneur to having a team. They usually build the team around them as if they're just this solopreneur still, and they try to micromanage them. And they're always complaining about the communication. They're always complaining about like people not doing things and why can't they just do what I tell them and
Right.
this sort of thing. And the problem, really, I like what you're saying is they have bad infrastructure and bad process. It's just things are not defined. There isn't clarity, and that leads to challenges in communication.
Right. That's exactly right.
Built into the process. It can be part of the process.
Right. Exactly. And that's
infrastructure-wise, you need the right tools to facilitate communication. I run a virtual company, and if we didn't have tools that facilitate communication, if there wouldn't be any. We're like in different states. Some of us different countries.
That's exactly right. And that's where really, they need to think about their business, about the product that they produce. And I use this somewhat as a nebulous example, but the product that they need to produce, it should be consistency. That's the product that they need to be shooting for. And when consistency is your product, the only competitor you're going to have is sloppiness. So when consistency is your product, sloppiness is your only competition. And that's the thing that is really hard for me to convey to lots of property managers, because they're saying, well, my product is, we've got all sorts of products. We sell properties, we buy properties, we do all these different things, but I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're making razor blades. You need to have a consistent product. And I will not allow us to do anything in the business unless we can do it consistently. So if they come to me and say, hey, you know what we should do? We should send out birthday cards to all our residents. Okay, great. How are you going to do that consistently? And you need to tell me who's going to manage it, who's going to do it, what's the negative feedback loop if that doesn't happen? Let me talk about negative feedback loop for a second. You put something in place. It's kind of like, I send you an email. What's the negative, expecting you to do something? What's the negative feedback loop I'm going to put in place if that doesn't happen, right? I'm not talking like a negative feedback loop like someone complains, which is often what happens. If something doesn't get done, you go, oh man, I don't know. I sent that email off 2 weeks ago. I forgot about it. I just assumed that they would do it. Well, what's the negative feedback loop that you're going to put in place to make sure it actually gets done? Are you going to list that in a honeypot? Are you going to set a task? Are you going to put something, in some task management software? What's the negative feedback loop that you're going to have to make sure that stuff gets part of process. But the infrastructure piece, let me just kind of boil this down into kind of an example, because I keep saying vision, infrastructure, process. But if you think of vision as your map, infrastructure would be the train tracks, and then the process would be the train that runs on those tracks that all stays in alignment with your vision for the future. Now, for property managers they're saying, well, my vision, why would my employees care about my vision? Well, they're not going to care about your vision. They're not going to work they're only going to work so hard, but they're not going to work that hard to put a boat in your, in your driveway, right?
Right.
Or a pool in your backyard. But what happens, and this is an extra step that kind of goes in with property managers, is once you have that vision for your future, then you go into developing core values for your business. And the core values are just the things that you value. You may value justice. You may value, efficiency. You may value lots of different things that are core to you. But now you get to identify what those things are, and that becomes your compass for all decisions that you're making. So once you have those core values defined, then you can start to pay, if you're making infrastructure improvements, you say, okay, is this in alignment with my core values? Right. If I'm going to make a hiring decision or a firing decision, are they acting within alignment with my core values? When I do my employee evaluations, I'm going to say, hey, when you did this was really in alignment with our core values, and I really like what you did. Or, hey, when you did this, I was really upset because it wasn't in alignment with my core values. I'm not upset at you. I'm just upset at your behavior because this isn't in alignment with our core values. So again, most companies will have, one of the things I'll coach them through is, somewhere 3, 4, 5, no more than 6. I mean, a lot of people sometimes want to get, we value all this stuff, but usually it's something just that's inherent to them as an individual, and they value these things. They value justice. They value equity. They value fairness. And they can value profitability. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean you're a bad person, because we all need profits to grow and get better and be a better company. But once you get those core values defined, then it's easier to put infrastructure and process improvements in place. The infrastructure, the things I'm talking about there is like websites and software and even the desks and chairs in your office. And the process pieces are really about how you operate. It's the rules upon which you operate. It's your SOP, it's your FAQs, those things that really help define how things are done in your office based on that infrastructure that you have in place.
Yeah, a lot of alignment between what you do and what I do with clients as well. So I'm like 3 to 4 core values for their business. Yeah, helping them figure out their purpose, their why as a business owner. Yeah. I mean, these things sound like woo-woo and fluff to a lot of people until they implement them. And then they're usually pretty astounded because like I tell my clients, you're the sun at the center of the solar system. If you don't like what's going on inside the solar system, you change the sun, everything changes.
That's right.
Usually as business owners, we try to externalize everything and tackle everything farthest away from ourselves. If we work on ourselves, everything changes by default.
That's so good. I love that. That is so true. That is so true.
Well, cool. So we've talked about vision, we've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about process. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on while we're hanging out here? This has been fun.
Well, yeah, the main thing, I see a lot of people out there that they're just working themselves. They've created a job for themselves, and they're not ever, trying to transition themselves out. And they think that there's no end in sight. They just can't. Right. I mean, getting a coach. What's that?
They've succumbed. They've
and that's
themselves to their fate. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. I mean, and I'm not saying I'm the coach for everybody, and you would probably say the same thing, that you're not the coach for everybody, but for God's sakes, get a coach. Get somebody that can help you get to where you want to go so much faster. Yeah, it's great being your own boss, but man, because you didn't want to be held accountable to anybody, but now you're not accountable to anybody, and now your life sucks. It didn't turn out the way you wanted. So if you're living the dream and your life is great, and you have everything that you want, that's great. I don't know that I can help you get much better, but get somebody to help you. I mean, we talked earlier about each of us having coaches, and I spend a lot of money each month on coaches to help me in areas where I have blind spots, and just to challenge me, just to say, hey, Mark, you said you were going to do X, Y, Z by a certain period of time, and that's not done. So now what? They already know how they're going to hold me accountable, and I pay a fair sum to these people. So it hurts when I show up. I know I'm going to be ready when the bell rings. It's not about paying them the money just for the sake of paying them the money so they can call and yell at me. They're a much softer touch, but the thing is, I want to make sure that I'm being held accountable, because we don't have anybody that's holding us accountable. That's the danger of being an entrepreneur. So I would really encourage people to look at that. It doesn't necessarily need to be real estate focused, although it probably would make more sense. But I have a one that helps me in sales. I have one that helps me in marketing. I have one that helps me as a national speaker. I go and I speak in a lot of different places. So I have one that helps coach me in that. And of course, different masterminds and things like that. So I would really highly encourage people that if they are looking or just flirting with the idea, get somebody that will, and I am going to say this, the difference between a coach and a mentor. I would say probably a mentor is probably someone that you're not paying. probably a friend,
Yeah.
they are not going to hold you accountable to the level that you need. Right? I say that this is someone you need to pay. It needs to hurt a little bit. And you need to have some skin in the game. You really need to be committed, and you really need to be paying somebody to do that. Like I said, doesn't need to be me, doesn't need to be you. I'm just saying it's someone, they need to be paying someone.
Yeah, there's some magic I've noticed just psychologically that happens and shifts inside of my clients, or that shifts inside of myself when I am paying a coach and I'm investing in myself, that it just shifts psychologically how we value ourselves, and energetically it allows us to convince others to invest in us as well. It's a hard sell to go out even as a property management business owner, and if you're doing the sales in your company, you're the BDM, and say, hey, you should spend money with us, you should invest, you should have us manage your rental property, but I don't even invest in myself. I don't care enough about myself or my business to invest in that. I'm just trying to make money, right? But
Right.
then you're going out asking others to invest in you. So I think psychologically, when you invest in yourself, I've noticed revenue goes up for me, lifestyle shifts. Like there's something that happens energetically and psychologically when you are, and subconsciously when you're investing in yourself, it shifts things. And I love what you're saying. Like everybody really deserves to have a coach. They deserve to be working with consultants. They deserve to have people above them. If you're at the top of the org chart, there's a problem. There's a
Right.
problem because everybody below in the org chart is hopefully being fed and getting some input and growing and evolving. But if you're at the top of the org chart and there's nobody above you, that's a scary place to be. You
Yeah.
instantly are the emperor with no clothes unless you get some sort of input, unless you get somebody that you can place above you in that org chart, like a coach or a mentor or
Right.
somebody
Right.
that can feed you. Yeah.
Yeah. I look at it exactly the way you're looking at it, except I flip the org chart upside down, and I look
Okay.
at, I look at those people as the direct supports for everybody above them,
Perfect.
because they're carrying the weight of everybody above them. So if you get somebody that's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're coming in late, and they're kind of wiggling around at the top, and you're trying to, keep the org chart, balanced. It's tough, and maybe, it's so far up that you can't see what's going on up there, but you have a coach that can stand back and go, that guy's playing Galaga, on his computer, and you don't even see it because you don't want to see it, or you just you can't see it. It's that's where it gets tricky, and a lot of times, you get too close to the problem and you can't see it. Whereas, someone, it's
Yeah.
like you sitting back, watching the waiter who's got 9 tables. You can see the problem instantly, but
The
where a
waiter
coach can.
probably can't sometimes. I mean, the
Yep.
manager can't. I mean, they're too close to the fire. They're
Yep.
dealing with what they're dealing with right in that moment. That's us as entrepreneurs all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've had a coach. I've sat down with a coach or talked to one of my coaches and said, "Hey, here's what I'm dealing with," and they say something to me, and I feel really stupid. And then I say back to them, "That's exactly what I would have told one of my clients." Like we're just too close to the fire. We have to have somebody outside of ourselves because we're the
Yep.
one that created the problem. We're at the
Yep.
helm.
Yep.
We are the problem. We are the biggest bottleneck in our company. We are the
Right.
one holding everything back. We're the
Right.
one preventing growth. And so us trying to solve the problem on our own is like trying to look at the back of our own head.
Yeah, yeah, it's like trying to put sunscreen on your own back. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. If you don't see yourself as part of the problem, you cannot see yourself as part of the solution. So a lot of times when, it's educating them to say, look, your company has a very real culture problem. And, that one is not respectful. That one is treating customers any way that they want. And, as a result, they're treating each other very poorly and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's because when you've got ill-defined core values, you're going to run into that. You're going to run into culture problems. And there was a client that, I really didn't feel like I could help him as much as I wanted to. But he had a real culture problem at his office, and he didn't really see it until he started letting some people go that were really some of the major problems. He had a life event that where we don't work together anymore, but I'd love to get him back on just to say, hey, how are you doing? Like, how did things evolve for you in terms of getting those core values more well defined, and really start holding people accountable to them? Like, one of the things that I do is, we have an 8:07 meeting every day. It's 8:07, And the reason it's 8:07 is people are rarely late to a meeting that's got an oddball time to it, right? So they always get there early. But there's not much I don't do without purpose. But every meeting, we pick one of our 5 core values and we review it. So they're not here, they're hearing these core values every single day. So that way, at their 90-day evaluation, guess what they get to go over again? Guess what they're hearing again? Our core values. And they're getting graded against those core values. So it's not just a shock like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, I never heard that core value before. And these are things that need to be repeated over and over.
Yeah, I think we run our businesses probably somewhat similarly. I think everything gravitates towards truth. We do our daily huddle at 8:45 every morning, and and I always have appointments starting at 9, so it has to be short, and that allows
Yep,
our team to see each other because we're
yep,
virtual. But yeah, and it's an oddball time, which does work.
yep,
Yeah, to make
yep,
sure people show up.
yep.
Yeah,
That
so
absolutely. Yeah,
well, cool, Mark. It's really great to connect with you, to
indeed.
get a feel for you, and how can people get in touch with you? Now, I want to point out, like we were talking before the show, your area of genius, what you really can help, probably our listeners with, is on the delivery, the fulfillment side, building out this portion of their business where they may be struggling, especially those that are graduating maybe from solopreneur to trying to build a team. Um, this sort of because that's where they're getting into systems and process, and
Right,
they're not the guy doing every single thing or the gal doing every single thing anymore,
right.
and that's a painful transition. So how can people get in touch with Mark and Landlord Coach?
Sure. Well, I've got a my website's landlordcoach.com. I'm on Facebook at my landlord coach, so you can find me easily. You can see the moniker in the back. But yeah, what just I think where you and I differ is I help create capacity in their world. I help create white space on their calendar. What they
Nice.
do with that white space is up to them. If they want to use that white space to grow their company from 300 doors to 800 doors, that's fine. I don't help them with the growth side. I just help them create capacity on their calendar, create white space so they can do whatever they want. Now, some people go, yeah, I'm happy with the white space and I really want to, I'm making enough money now and I've got time on my calendar. I'm cool. Like I've got everything I want. Some people go, they get to that point and they're like, no, we're ready to grow. I'm not the growth guy. That's not what I do. I'm not from that piece of it. I would turn it over to someone like you and say, hey, they're going to help you. Now that you got this increased capacity, that's the person that's going to help you take your business from 1,000 doors to 2,000 doors or whatever. That's not what I do. But what I do is I help them create capacity on their calendar. So to that aspect, I just, I want to make sure I delineate myself there because I do work with a lot of individual investors, but I also do work with property managers and just helping them get a life back. And that's one of the biggest things that I do.
Love it. Well, Mark, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for being here.
This has been great. Thanks so much. And my best wishes to all your listeners.
Thank you. All right, we'll let Mark go. So, all right, if you enjoyed the show, be sure to like and subscribe on whichever channel you're on. We're on YouTube. We are on iTunes, and make sure that you subscribe to our email newsletter. And if you are a property management entrepreneur that's wanting to grow your business, add doors, and increase your revenue, then please reach out to us over at DoorGrow. We'd be happy to have a conversation and see if you'd be a good fit for what we might be able to do for you. So, and of course, check out Mark and his business over at Landlord Coach. So, and that's it for today. Until next time, to our mutual growth, everyone. Bye.